Ladies and gentlemen, we did it. What's up, everyone? Welcome back. I'm Grant Cohn. I went live earlier today. I didn't know the Niners were going to hire a defensive coordinator, but that's exactly what they did. And they hired Raheem Morris. And so I'm here to give you my instant reaction to this news. First, I just want to take credit for it 100%. I want to give you some credit, but I also want to take the majority of the credit because I feel like the Niners were really flirting with the idea of hiring Gus Bradley. And they even pretty much said so. He was the leading internal candidate. He would have been, just a knockoff version of Robert Saleh. He would have represented no change, no evolution. It would have been bad. And I saw a lot of people talking about why it would have been okay and why people were being too hard on Gus Bradley. And that was the plan. And if that's the plan, then they should stick to the plan. Well, I'm glad they didn't. I imagine that Gus Bradley will still be on the staff as the assistant head coach unless Saleh brings him with him to Tennessee. I don't think anyone wants Gus Bradley to be their defensive coordinator in 2026. Maybe I'm wrong. The Niners thought about it, didn't go that direction. That's great. I mean, they could have waited for Jim Schwartz, but he's under contract with the Browns. He might force his way out of the contract, but who knows? I mean, it's the Browns. They're kind of weird, and it doesn't seem like he and Kyle Shanahan are particularly close or friends anyway. So instead of waiting around for a guy you might not get, you go get a very good defensive coordinator with head coaching experience who is very close friends with the head coach. This makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense. This is a very, very good hire. It's intriguing. It's actually, I don't know if he's as good as Robert Saleh. Robert Saleh really did. I mean, the defense wasn't good this year, but it could have been really bad. It was better this year than it was the previous year, and that's because of Saleh. Under Sorensen, defense was bad, even though it had Bosa and Fred Warner and Lenore and Travarius Ward. This past year, the defense was mediocre despite not having anyone except for Lenore. So he fits. He's a culture fit. He's a friend with the head coach. He's about the head coach's age. If he stays here for 2 years and gets another head coaching job, one, he's already had 2 head coaching jobs. He one with the Buccaneers like 15 years ago when he was real young. I don't know if that even counts, but he got fired. And then most recently with the Falcons, got fired. Hasn't really done well as a head coach. So you could argue, hey, maybe he's not going to get a third opportunity, and the Niners will have continuity and stability at defensive coordinator for the first time ever under Kyle Shanahan. Or he's so successful, this defensive coordinator job is such a springboard to head coaching opportunities that in a couple of years he does get a head coaching job, and if so, the Niners get a third-round comp pick. So win-win. I would imagine that's what this is. But I think the reason people are tuning in right now is you want to know, what does this mean for the evolution of the defense? How are things going to change? Who's going to fit? Who won't? Will things change? You know what I mean? Like, if the 49ers brought in Raheem Morris to do what Steve Wilks did, like, hey, man, we like that you have head coaching experience. We like that we could get a comp pick for you if you're here for a couple of years and leave. We like your acumen. You seem smart. We just don't want you to run your defense. Don't bring any of your position coaches. Don't follow any of your instincts. Throw them away. Sign with us. Learn a scheme that you don't know immediately, and then coach it, and have a bunch of position coaches who don't know you and probably won't really vouch for you or convey your message the way you want it. And a bunch of players who don't know you probably won't like you. Break. That was a Steve Wilks mistake. I'm hopeful that the 49ers learned from that. I think they may have. I think the whole idea about Gus Bradley was, hey, we know that Saleh could be one and done. So let's not repeat the Steve Wilks mistake, which was, didn't Kyle talk about it at the end of your press conference? You brought him in. Maybe he did. You brought him in, but you didn't give him any time to learn this scheme that you wanted him to coach. He wasn't familiar with it, and you asked him to coach it. With Bradley, at least he was in the organization for a year, he could watch Salah, which is kind of rich to me. It's like, okay, you could put a, a mediocre chef in a kitchen with Emeril Lagasse. Doesn't make him Emeril. It's because he watched him for a year. So I don't think they want to do the Steve Wilks. I think they feel Steve Wilks failed because it was ridiculous to ask him to coach that when he had no exposure to it. So Raheem Morris has no exposure to this wide nine thing, to this Robert Saleh thing that the Niners have been running pretty much without any changes since 2019. 7 years. And you got the OG, came back, made it work. Saleh's great. He's gone. Bradley couldn't do that. I'm glad they didn't hire him. If they're asking Raheem Morris to be Robert Saleh, he's screwed, they're screwed. This isn't going to work. It's the Steve Wilks situation all over again. Hey, man, you can come here, but you got to keep Chris Kasarik, and you got to run the wide nine. You got to learn the wide nine and coach it in the same year. Good luck. I mean, Steve Wilks didn't do a terrible job. Defense still gave up like third fewest points in the league that season. They were really healthy that year too. But ultimately, when they came up short, he's the one that got fired. I don't think Kyle Shanahan would scapegoat Raheem Morris, his friend, the way he scapegoated Steve Wilks, who we didn't know. So that's good. But again, if they're bringing him in to run the wide nine, this is a bad idea. But I don't think they are. I actually have some confidence that this is Kyle Shanahan finally evolving, acknowledging that his defense is stale and that he doesn't need to be micromanaging it anymore. He can turn it over to someone who he respects, Raheem Morris, and let him change it as he sees fit. Because you know what? Robert Saleh's not coming back. D'Amico Ryans isn't coming back. You're never having that. It's time to change. Gregorius Gregg's been a member for 50 months. That's a long time. Thank you, Gregorius Gregg. Hold on. Let me go live on Instagram. I always forget to do that. Benjamin Button says, biggest question has to be what's going to change with the scheme. I don't think the personnel is qualified for 3-4 defense. Doubt Bosa wants to play outside linebacker, sub G. Yeah, let's talk about it. I'm going to get to it right now. Partridge Mike says, Kyle Shanahan prefers a malleable DC that takes his suggestions. Jim Schwartz likely a threat. I don't know that that's necessarily what it is. You know what I mean? Because I don't look at Kyle Shanahan as being so aggressive and domineering face to face. I think Schwartz is. And I think Kyle's much more laid back and non-confrontational. And I think he probably wants people around him like that as well, because he doesn't necessarily have the horsepower verbally to go back and forth. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he does, and I haven't seen that side of him. Let's take a deep dive and examine how Raheem Morris is going to change this Niners defense. There's a few things to look at, and the first thing we're going to look at is the structure of the defense. It might be the least important thing to look at, but it's the first thing. Niners been running a wide nine as a base defense. Now, teams are running base defense less and less and less. 25% of the time. The Seahawks run it like 0% of the time. They're just a nickel defense. So we'll see what the Niners do. But I think I'm assuming they're going to go to a 3-4 now. I'm assuming they're going to go to a 3-4. But again, that's only going to be for a quarter of the defensive snaps anyway. It's not what's most important. We'll see. If they stick with the wide nine, they're in trouble. The wide nine is stale. It's been figured out. You've been running it for freaking 7 seasons. You don't have a wide nine coach. You have a wide nine D-line coach, but you don't have a wide nine defensive coordinator. I hope they let him do his thing. So this is going to look more like a LA Rams defense, 3-4. But I think what's interesting is not just the structure of it, but how he will deploy his personnel, namely the pass rush. For the last 2 years, the Niners have had the most vanilla pass rush in the league, whether it was Saleh or Sorensen. They just don't rush 5. And maybe it's because they don't think they have the corners to pull it off. I don't think that's necessarily it, because Lenore is good, and Renardo Green is good in man-to-man coverage. Stout's not bad in man-to-man coverage. I mean, you could argue that Green and Lenore and Stout are all better in man-to-man coverage than in zone. It's not like those guys are like incredible playmakers, but they run 4-4s, 4-3s, and anyway, they have great movement skills. Despite that, Robert Saleh rushed 5 on only 15% of opponent pass plays. I'm getting this from Sumer Sports, Sumer. On 633 total dropbacks against the Niners last year, Robert Saleh rushed 5 defenders 97 times, not 5 or more. It's 15.3%. That's very, very conservative. Meanwhile, in Atlanta, with Raheem Morris, who has 2 good outside linebackers and a good pass rush, he rushed 5 on 34.6% of opponents' dropbacks, 217 out of 626 total dropbacks. So that's a way different philosophy. Saleh's philosophy is rush for hang back, play zone, encourage the check down, rally up, make the tackle, long drives, no explosives, bend but don't break. And when he has great defensive linemen, he can have a great defense. But the Niners are never going to have that D line again while they're paying all this money to Brock Purdy and other people on the offense. They might have a good D lineman, but they're not going to have what they had 4, 5, 6 years ago, where it's like 6, 7 deep with 4 first-round picks or 5 first-round picks on. That's not going to happen anymore. So I love this. If they're really going to let Raheem Morris bring pressure and be aggressive, the defense could be even better. Robert Saleh's great. And it kind of frustrates me how conservative he can be at times, particularly against, offenses like Seattle, who have Sam Darnold, who's good but not great. I mean, at no point in the last 2 matchups could Robert Saleh force the game into Darnold's hands. Now you have a defensive coordinator who's going to bring pressure, going to play man-to-man behind it, and make life force these quarterbacks to actually hold the ball a little bit, as opposed to just standing in the shotgun, getting it and firing it right over the middle to someone wide open. I love that. So I'm getting ahead of myself, but I really do feel like Kyle Shanahan has figured out that having this vanilla defense doesn't work when you don't have, Hall of Famers all over the defense. This worked for Gus Bradley 15 years ago when there were Hall of Famers all over the defense. It works when you have Robert Saleh, probably because Robert Saleh can make anything work. He's very clever. If he decided he wanted to run a 3-4, he could probably make that work too. But I like the transition from just take away the explosives to no, let's put pressure on the offense, because I feel like that's given Kyle problems too. I mean, the wide 9 is given him problems, but when he goes up against defenses like Minnesota, Brian Flores, who has all these creative pressures and plays and can play man-to-man coverage behind it, he struggles. He struggled against Steve Spagnuolo in the Super Bowl when he brought pressure. Maybe this will make Kyle Shanahan a better offensive coach, being around a coach who brings so much pressure from so many different ways that he's not necessarily, exposed to with this. And this finally signals the end of the Niners' strange obsession with the Pete Carroll defense. I don't get it. Now, if you can have Robert Saleh, by all means, let him run it. He's hella good at that. But no one else. No one wants a Pete Carroll defense in 2026. Not even if it's run by Pete Carroll. So it's great that Kyle Shanahan finally let that go. The whole league figured it out. It's not effective anymore. And I like the idea of a guy who will rush 5 and play man-to-man coverage sometimes. It's more aggressive defense. It'll get the defense off the field. Now, you might give up some big plays, but it'll also be better on 3rd down. Much better on 3rd down, I would think. Now, some of these players aren't going to fit this defense. I think Lenore's a good fit. I think Renardo Green's a really good fit. If Gus Bradley had been the coach and they were going to play zone all day and ask their corners to be like run defenders, they might have got rid of Renardo Green. But now that it's Raheem Morris, I don't know. I think that's the kind of corner you want if you're going to be rushing 5 on 3rd down. He's going to be playing press man coverage. That's what he did in college. The question is what the Morris hire means for the defensive line. This is really interesting because I do assume that they're going to go to a 3-4. It's what he knows. Again, if you ask him to run the wide nine, you're setting him up for failure. You're repeating the Steve Wilkes mistake. I don't think the Niners are dumb enough to do that. So let's assume they do the right thing and let him run his defense. It's a 3-4. Okay, so what does that mean for Nick Bosa? What does that mean for Mykel Williams? What does that mean for Bryce Huff? Let's go one by one. Well, let's start with Mykel Williams, the first round pick from last year. He played in a 3-4 defense in college. He mostly played 3-4 D end. The Niners thought that moving him out in space in the wide nine would unlock something. It didn't. He's a good run defender wherever you put him. But I don't like playing edge rushers. I don't like playing defensive linemen at D end if they're not pass rush threats at that position. Because sure, you can move them to defensive tackle on third down, but it's nice to have some edge rush on first and second down because teams also pass on first and second down. It's true. And the thing is, he's not even that great of a pass rusher from the interior, but that's neither here nor there. I think this will be good. They experimented with moving him to the edge. They thought maybe putting him in space, giving him more space at the wide nine spot would help. It didn't. So now you can put him back at his natural position, which is 3-4 defensive end. So this hire actually could be extremely beneficial to the 49ers. First round pick last year, who was promising, took up a lot of double teams, was great against the run. He might even be better at those two things in this 3-4 defense, assuming he gets to play like the Justin Smith position. So I like that for him. But then for the edge rushers, Bryce Huff and Nick Bosa, in the nickel defense, they fit. But in the base defense, are they outside linebackers? I mean, isn't Bryce Huff on the 49ers because he's not an outside linebacker? Because he was on the Jets in the wide nine, and then he signed with the Eagles, who run a 3-4 and tried to rush from a 2-point stance, but learned quickly that he's absolutely awful rushing from a 2-point stance and that he needs to get low to the ground and use his hand to create some type of leverage and explosion. Otherwise, he has none. So maybe trade him to the Titans. And then there's Nick Bosa. His brother has been in 3-4 defenses before, but when his brother plays in those defenses, he's usually a D end, like Mykel Williams. I mean, Nick's bigger than Mykel Williams. He weighs more than Mykel. He's about, well, maybe not. I don't know what Mykel weighs now. He's young. But would Nick Bosa want to play in a 2-point stance? Does he? I always assume the reason the Niners hung on to this wide nine for so long is because they've been running it since Bosa was a rookie. Him and Chris Kasarik came in at the same time. And the Niners, for some reason, worked like bend over backwards to keep certain members of the team happy. I mean, George Kittle, Trent Taylor's on the practice squad because he's friends with George Kittle. I assume that Chris Kasarik is still on the coaching staff because he's friends with Nick Bosa. But if they just went out and got Raheem Morris, if they're going to change to a 3-4, if they're going to get rid of Chris Kasarik, or Chris Kasarik is going to start coaching a 3-4, does that mean the Niners are not so concerned about appeasing Nick Bosa anymore? I mean, I gave him all the money he ever wanted. They let him work out away from the team. But now he's rehabbing his third ACL tear, and his contract is awful. It's gotten really expensive. He signed that extension a few years ago. Now you're at the part where he's making, $41 million on the cap. Next year it'll be 50 something. Maybe they're starting to think about life after Nick Bosa. They're spending a lot of money on other players. They might have felt like that was a worthwhile investment 3 years ago before they realized they're going to be giving $53 million a year to their quarterback, and that Nick Bosa wasn't going to be giving them 17 sacks a season, and that he was going to tear his ACL again. Maybe this is an indicator that Bosa might not be long for the 49ers. I know people were talking about that the Niners should sign Joey Bosa Reunite him. That's another guy that doesn't really. The Niners need outside linebackers now. Outside line, maybe that's what they draft in round 1, 2 this year. Guys who actually play outside linebacker, like James Pierce or Jalen Walker, guys the Niners passed on last year because they run the wide 9. It's going to be interesting to see if bringing back Robert Saleh for 1 year and letting him, I would assume, pick these players in the draft to fit his system that the Niners don't use anymore. Does that affect them, or do these guys all fit? Is Alfred Collins going to fit? Is he a nose tackle? You could put him at, I guess, 3-4 DN. You could put CJ West's a natural nose tackle. He could do that. You could have your D line could be, the ends could be Michael and Alfred Collins with CJ West in the middle. You just don't have outside linebackers. Maybe trade Nick Bosa for an outside linebacker. It's going to be interesting to see what they do there. I like the idea of trading Nick Bosa. If the Niners are going to do that, I might just buy a Niner hat. I might just get season tickets. Benjamin Button says, loved the 3-4 with Harbaugh and Fangio. Why not switch it up, man? Teams know exactly how to attack you with this wide 9. Do something different. This guy says, only took Kyle 10 years to figure out defense was outdated. Yeah, it's true. It took him 10 years. It was outdated when he brought it in. Fortunately, Robert Saleh is really good. Then he says, pray this isn't Steve Wilks 2.0 making RM run wide 9. That's what it all comes down to. And I really don't know what they're going to do. I assume they're not going to make the same mistake twice. And if they do, it's a fireable offense. If you bring in Raheem Morris and you force him to run the wide 9 and you don't let him bring any position coaches with them, and the defense struggles and the team doesn't go far, you're not firing Raheem Morris. You don't get to scapegoat Raheem Morris. This is the same mistake twice. Everyone has to go. That's why I feel like it's so much safer to just let him do whatever. If Raheem Morris comes in, changes the defense, runs the 3-4, doesn't work, then you fire him. It's his fault. What were you thinking, changing things? And you get to bring in someone else maybe. But you don't turn him into Steve Wilks 2.0. Okay, I can't take more questions. I do want to bring up some news around the league. This is interesting news for the 49ers. It looks like there's a real chance that Clint Kubiak, the offensive coordinator for the Seattle Seahawks, will go to the Raiders. I do find it very interesting the language that's being used to report this story. Adam Schefter 2 hours ago says, source, after meeting Saturday with Las Vegas and Arizona, Seahawks offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak intends to try to work out a deal to become the next head coach of the Raiders. Intends to try to work out a deal to become the next head coach of the Raiders. So that doesn't seem like it's a done deal at all. Of course, it can't be finalized, but it doesn't even sound like it's finalized in principle. Intends to try to work out a deal. Okay. Well, that seems like they have a lot of working out to do. Then you got Ian Rappaport, same time, saying Raiders are targeting Seahawks OC Clint Kubiak as their new head coach after Sunday's second interview. Vegas can't officially hire Kubiak until after the Super Bowl, but they believe they have their guy. So according to Rappaport, the Raiders are targeting Kubiak and they believe he'll sign. Schefter says Kubiak intends to try to work it out. So what I'm hearing is that they have more negotiating to do. That's what it sounds like to me. That maybe there's something that Clint wants that the Raiders haven't put into writing yet. Who knows? I would imagine the Seahawks are making an aggressive counteroffer. I don't know. All I'll say is this, Clint, if you're watching, and I know you are. Gary, Clay, hello, all the Kubiaks. Clint, if you're watching, and this isn't official yet, which we know it's not. It can't become official until after the Super Bowl. You haven't put pen to paper. You probably haven't even given it a handshake. It doesn't sound like it's done and they've given you everything you want. What I'm going to tell you right now is crucial, Clint. Listen up. Do not go to the Raiders. It would be the biggest mistake of your career. So far, you've handled your career so well. You were a nobody with the Niners a couple of years ago. Now you're calling plays for the best team in football. Stay there. Do not leave the best situation in football for the Raiders. Because what you're going to learn about the Raiders is they're not a good organization. You're going to fail there. Everyone fails there. The Raiders are an organization for, I hate to say it, losers. You can't win there. It can't be done. The issues are way bigger. It's the ownership. You don't even know who's making decisions over there. So I don't know, man. Clint, this sounds terrible. Don't make this mistake. Now, if you go to the Raiders, that's great news for the 49ers. That would be the best news for the 49ers because now you got the Seahawks looking for their third OC in 3 years and Darnold with another OC. He never gets any continuity. And, who you're either going to try to find. They can't get Clay Kubiak. Kyle won't let him go. He says he calls plays here. So that wouldn't be a promotion. I don't think there's any other Kubiak kids. Gary's not coming out of retirement. So if they lose him, they might have to go to a whole different system, a whole different tree, maybe someone similar but not as good. That wouldn't be good for Darnold. That'd be great for the Niners. It just seems. Now, I understand, okay, they're probably making you a big offer and you have the opportunity to get the number 1 pick. You feel like you're sort of in demand right now, but it's the Raiders, man. If you were really in demand, the Giants would have called you up. The Ravens would have called you up. If you win the Super Bowl and bring it back next year and do well again, you're going to be the number 1 candidate on the market, and the Raiders won't even be able to get your attention. Be patient. Seahawks offense could be even better next year as Darnold settles in and actually learns the system a little bit better. Anyway, all I'm saying is don't do it, Clint. It's a huge mistake. You'll regret it. And my prediction is that he won't. He's not going to ultimately go to the Raiders. I don't like the way that Pelissero and Schefter reported that. It sounded like the kind of report that would come out about the Raiders. Just not finished and not serious. Let us know when it's done. Don't tell us what you intend to do or what he thinks he wants to try to do. And Clint, smarten up. That's not the move for you. Gallus says Bosa for Crosby, max rush as well from a 2-point. Sounds good to me. I'm with that. Jeremiah Smith, new member. All right. Well, those are my topics for the day. I will take some more super chats and I'll think of more things to talk about, but I want to do some prize picks real quick. I want to get some NFL prize picks. I wish I could do some Niner prize picks, but let's do a Clint Kubiak edition of the Super Bowl prize picks. Just given the fact that Clint is maybe not as locked in as he should be. He's over there having second interviews with Mark Davis. All right, Sam Darnold, 229.5 passing yards. I'm saying less simply because of the Kubiak factor. Then I'm going rushing yards. Kenneth Walker, less because Kubiak. I'm so disappointed in him. Who else? Receiving yards. Jackson Smith and Jigba, less, all because of Kubiak. His fault, 100%. Cooper Kupp, less. Not going to happen. Okay. Let's go passing yards. Drake May, 220, less. This is going to be a defensive game. And then receiving yards. Kayshawn Booty, great name, less. I did my first ever all less prize picks, and I'm feeling pretty good about it. Cooper Kupp, less. Drake May, less. JSN, less. Kayshawn Booty, less. Kenneth Walker, less. Sam Darnold, less. Feeling really good about that. Psycho, less. Entry fee, $400. Flexing it. Hater of the year right here. These are my hater prize picks, hater Super Bowl prize picks. Definitely going to flex it just in case. Boom. Check it out. If I get all 6 right, I win $4,000. Can't wait for that. Download prize picks yourself. Use promo code COHN. Play $5, get $50 instantly in lineups when you use that promo code. All right, let's take some super chats. Chupa Me Verga says, who do we take in the draft after this hire? It definitely feels like edge rusher is a huge need right now, right? Mykel Williams was the pick last year, but now he's probably a 3-4 D end. I don't know. We're going to have to hear from Kyle Shanahan and John. So when are we going to get some clarity as to what this actually means? I doubt they'll have a Raheem Morris press conference because that would be helpful. So don't have that. Hey, John Lynch speaks to the media in a month, 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks at the combine. He'll shed some light on it. Some, not a lot. He'll say something pretty vague, I would imagine, actually. But hopefully soon we will get some clarity onto what this means about the system. I don't know. The Niners are aware of PR and what people think and what fans want. If they say, yeah, Raheem Morris, but he's gonna run the wide nine. I mean, they know what the questions are. Really? Why? Isn't that what you did with Steve Wilkes? Why would this be different than the Steve Wilkes situation? They don't want to answer that question. Unless I'm tripping. Lynch can win me over trading for Buckner back. I think it's over for Buckner. Says JT Maynor. I think it's over for Buckner. It's too bad. He should have spent his prime with the 49ers instead of the Indianapolis Colts. Mars 7352 says, if Raheem brings the 3-4 defense, will they draft a player like Aldon Smith or will they pick up someone in free agency? I think they need to go. Well, it's a good question. Did you notice that last year they didn't really spend much on players in free agency that weren't on their team? They splurged. They got a backup tight end. They got a backup quarterback. They got a backup. Well, I got backups in free agency last year. It seems like the new starters are going to have to come from the draft, especially while they're spending all this money on the quarterback thing. Seems to be the issue right now. So I'm looking. Hold on. Let's look up the Falcons draft history. I don't know how much input Raheem Morris had there, but their first 2 picks last year were outside linebackers. Jalen Walker, James Pierce. James Pierce had 10.5 sacks. Jalen Walker had 5.5. These guys, James Pierce, the Niners passed on both these guys. James Pierce, 6'5", 243, real lean. Jalen Walker, 6'2", 245. So they're going to have to get guys like that. Bryce Huff isn't that kind of guy. Robert Beal isn't good enough. They need edge rushers. And I wonder, maybe they can trade Nick Bosa for a couple. Probably not. They'd take a huge dead cap hit trading Nick Bosa. I wish I could give you more like concrete information about what's going to happen to the defense. But doesn't it make sense that they would let Raheem Morris do his thing? The only thing that gives me pause is it's like, does that really mean they're going to get rid of Chris Kasarik? I can't see it. I don't know. It'll be interesting. If Chris Kasarik stays and they run the 3-4, is that good? Can he coach that? What will it take for you to do Mac Jones gritty? Oh, man. If he's still on the team next season, I'll do it. Otherwise, you're never going to see it. Shouldn't the Sam Darnold experience give the Niners pause when it comes to trading Mac Jones? How about that as a topic? Mac Jones. Like, I think it's interesting how the Niners think they don't need Mac Jones or that he's good, but since they have their quarterback who's making so much money, he's kind of like a luxury item. Sure, but for another team, wouldn't he just be freaking perfect? Aren't we learning that in the NFL, maybe the best way to build a team in this era where the salary cap is incredible and it's just exploding every year and you can spend a ton of money, maybe the best thing to do isn't to give all that money to the quarterback? I mean, as the salary cap goes up, it seems like quarterback salaries are going up exponentially. It used to be a good quarterback would get 10% of the cap. Now it's damn near 20. $55, $60 million a year. What you're going to do is trade Mac Jones to a really savvy team that's going to give him somewhere around $30 million a year, which is so reasonable for a good quarterback. You don't have to be great. But all you have to do is be experienced and good with be able to good enough to know what to do with a good team. And Mac Jones can do that. We saw him with a bad team this year. All he needed was a good scheme and a good play caller. You give him freaking Kendrick Bourne and he'd dice you up. You're going to hand that guy to that's a championship or piece right there. A good quarterback making a reasonable amount of money who's experienced and not his second year in the league. That's a dangerous player. We didn't take Sam Darnold seriously until you realized what kind of a team the Seahawks could put around him with that salary and what he could do on a good team. Maybe the Niners trade Mac Jones to some horrible franchise, but if you end up trading him to Minnesota, dude, good luck. You really want to send Mac Jones into this in the same conference and set him up with Justin Jefferson? I wouldn't want to do that. That could be a whole lot like Sam Darnold going to Seattle and having Jackson Smith and Jigba. It could be better than that. You already set up the Seahawks to win one Super Bowl. The Niners have set up some. You could argue that the Niners are responsible for the Chiefs dynasty, giving them Mahomes and then facing them in the Super Bowl and losing to them when they should have won both times. You're the only reason the Rams have a Super Bowl victory because you had a 10-point lead you couldn't hold in an NFC Championship game, and then now you could have just given the freaking Seahawks the missing piece. They wouldn't have won this year with Geno Smith. Not that you gave him Sam Darnold. The Vikings did. And they just fired isn't it crazy how they fired their general manager? Something comes out every 6 hours about today was that he took paternity leave 2 weeks during training camp. I wouldn't have done that in his position, but I think it's crazy how they're trying to smear this dude's name. You already fired him. He's gone. Why do you have to justify it? Like his drafts weren't good. Everyone could see it. You don't have to drag him through the mud on the way out and be like, he didn't even work hard. Okay. You gave him paternity leave though. You could have fired him on the spot. But you didn't. You waited until you went 9-7. You thought everyone in Vikings country seemed like they thought JJ McCarthy was going to be good. All of them, including KOC. And then he ends up being awful. And they're like, you know what? Kwesi talked us into that. It was his fault. I don't know. Anyway, I would be really careful about trading Mac Jones. You want to trade him to the Arizona Cardinals? I wouldn't even do that. You want to put him in the same division as you and give him Marvin Harrison and Michael what's that dude's name? Michael Wilson? I wouldn't do that. Trey McBride? I wouldn't do that. If you could trade him to the New York Jets. But do the Niners want to do that? Hey, man, thanks so much for saving our season last year. We're going to trade you to the worst team possible just so we make sure that your career is a abysmal failure and you don't come back to haunt us like Sam Darnold is. I don't think they're going to do that. So I would just hold on to him. Because who knows? You know what I'm saying? Like, say you hold on to Mac Jones. Brock Purdy comes back this year and doesn't play so well. Maybe he gets hurt again. Maybe he plays 8-9 games. Maybe he keeps throwing picks. Maybe it's 2-3. If he does that again next year, that's 3 years of it. Injuries and interceptions while making hella money. Maybe if he does one more year of that, the Niners think, you know what? Maybe let's keep Mac instead of Brock Purdy. Let me look at Brock Purdy's contract real quick before we get out of here. You can't move him now, but next year, 2027, it would be more doable. If they traded him before the draft in 2027, it'd only have a $5 million dead cap penalty. And the Niners took on $100 million in dead cap last year. They're not scared of dead cap. So they can't trade him this year. There'd be a $66 million dead cap penalty if they traded him this year. But next year, it can be done. And, cap number last year, $9 million. This year, 24. Next year, 30. So if they want to not pay him all that much money, they could trade him before next year. And then in 2028, his cap number goes up to $57 million. So they got to make a decision about Brock Purdy in the next couple of years anyway, whether to keep him or extend him, because you can't have him taking up $57 million of your cap space in 2028. That can't happen. So maybe in 2026, if Brock has another season like this where he's up and down, he plays well against good defenses, those picks, gets hurt, and I say, you know what? Maybe we want to get out of this market of the $55 million a year quarterback market. We want to move out of this neighborhood, this overpriced, gated community Is being having a quarterback with for paying $53 million a year for a quarterback who's not elite is like living in Blackhawk. Yes, you have a mansion, but it's in a gated community that's like 45 minutes away from San Francisco, and all the mansions look exactly the same, and you're right next to another mansion. You have no privacy, but hey, at least you're in Blackhawk, and you're paying a lot of money for a house that has really no style or personality or taste. But at least you have a mansion that's probably way too expensive. No offense if you live in Blackhawk. That's what I think about the quarterback market. Like, why are you spending $15 million a year for that mansion when you could get a way nicer house in the Berkeley Hills with an actual view and some taste? So that's a weird. Where am I going with that? What all I'm saying is, if the Niners want to get out of this ridiculous market, and I think if the Seahawks win the Super Bowl, a lot of teams are going to want to get out of this market because you don't have to be in it. It's exorbitant. They could say, you know what, we're going to trade Brock and his contract and extend Mac and give him a 3-year deal, $100 million. Not that much, reasonable. And we're going to get back to investing in other positions. And then Brock can go somewhere else and get a restructured deal, and he'll get paid more like $30-something million a year, and then that team can actually win. These contracts are team killers. So hold on to Mac Jones. He gives you an out. Brock Purdy's a good quarterback, hell of a quarterback, and he might be better than Mac Jones. But that contract is just a killer, man. And I think we're learning a significant lesson here this season. Sam Darnold is not the best quarterback in the league. He's not even top 10. But I would absolutely take Sam Darnold on his contract over Dak Prescott on his. I would rather have Sam Darnold on his contract as opposed to Trevor Lawrence on his, and on and on and on. That's the lesson this year. And Mac Jones gives the 49ers the out. Hold on to it. Exercise it. Sergio says, ideally, Bosa or Williams turns into Justin Smith and they get an outside linebacker or edge rusher coming from the same side like Alden Smith. You think Nick Bosa is going to want to change positions? I just don't see it, man. I don't see it. This might be, I hope they trade him. That'd be pretty cool. All right, guys, I'm getting out of here. It's 1:33. See if I could play a little golf, get out in the sun a little bit today. I was trying to enjoy my weekend a little bit, but this happened and I'm grateful. Thanks all 3,500 of you guys for watching, and we'll figure out if they're going to run the wide nine defense or not soon. Stay tuned.